Hello and welcome back to Stranded Deep, welcome back to Pacific Paradise, and welcome back to the island we find ourselves on. This time we're going to be doing a slightly unusual video. We're going to be looking at the graphics settings from low to high, and you may say, hang on a minute, old chum, you've already done this video before. A few years ago I did indeed do a graphics settings video from low to high. And people keep looking at it, and I'm like, hang on a second, this is an old video from when the game was in early access, so now the game is released, it's live, and it's also available on consoles, on PlayStation and Xbox. I thought we could revisit it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off out here, outside of the harbour. We're going to just walk straight from here into the interior of the island and just see what happens when we change things around. We're going to look at some individual settings as well, because there are some interesting settings. So we'll just choose a path through. Currently I'm playing on custom settings. They're mostly high and maxed out. They are on PC, because I play the game on PC, but there are some things that you can do to save a little bit of horsepower if you need to save a little bit of horsepower if you are playing on a system that isn't quite punchy enough. Now, there are some caveats to note. I am playing at 1440p, and I'm seeing the game as it is buttery smooth, but I am also recording it on OBS, and I've never been able to get OBS to record smoothly, so there may be some stutters and judders that just aren't here when I'm playing. While I am playing at 1440p, you are seeing a 1080p image because OBS also shrinks the image down to 1080 because, well, I just don't have the bandwidth to upload anything at 2K. And while we're there, Premiere and YouTube itself are going to squash the image down even further, so there are some caveats, but we can see the main effect of things as we play through. If I bring up the FPS meter, it's not really going to affect me because this machine is built for rendering, and, well, we're just looking for the visual differences. So why don't we just escape and change some settings? And here we are on the main menu. This is the best place to change graphic settings because if you do it in game, some of the settings do in fact get stuck, at least in my experience. So what you would do is you would save your game and come back here, or if you haven't started a game, you'll be here anyway. Then you go to options and then you go to graphics and you will find the presets at the top. We have a bunch of settings here which I'm just going to go through. But first of all, the presets go from laptop to low to medium to high to ultra. Now we have the resolution. The resolution should always be the resolution of your current monitor or television screen. For me, that's 1440p. Color profile, you can go from vibrant to natural. Personally, I prefer playing it on vibrant because it gives nicer blues and greens in the environment. Fixed frame rate, well, if you need to have a fixed frame rate, you can absolutely do that, but personally, I just leave that as off and then rely on VSync with 1 frame. You can try 2 frames, but I found stuttering with 2 frames, so either off and then a fixed frame rate, or have VSync on. VSync stops screen tearing, so as you're looking left and right, if you see the screen break up into bands or bars, turn that on, and I would recommend 1 frame. Full screen or window mode, well, I mean, it is what it is. You can either run it in a window and have it on a different monitor, or you can just run it on full screen. You would only really need that setting if you were streaming or something like that. Field of view, by default, it is 60. I would probably turn that up to maybe 75. I know some people go with 90, but personal preferences apply here. That is how much screen is visible left and right. It is basically the field of view, kind of like your eyeball. Your eyeball has something like a 170-degree field of view, but the caveat is, the wider the screen, the wider the field of view, the more further away things look in the center of the screen, so just keep that in mind. 75 is a comfortable position. You may need more or less if you're getting motion sick. The draw distance, that is how far away items are drawn. We have it set to very far, but we can have it near if you are having trouble with lots of objects on screen at any time, far and then very far. There are only a few settings there. Textures, that is how detailed things like the sand or the rust on panels and things are, tree bark and various bits and pieces. You can also turn that to low, medium, high and ultra. Ultra requires a little bit more video RAM or VRAM, but if your system can handle it, there's no reason why you wouldn't never have that on anything lower than Ultra. Same thing for shadows. Shadows do actually have a huge impact on system performance. If you are having trouble with the game and you are having severe FPS drops, then one of the things you can do is change the shadows to either low or medium. I would say medium gives you a best quality versus performance in the game. Otherwise, I mean, for everyone else, there's always Ultra. Billboard density. Billboard density is the density of distant islands. So as you get further away from an island, the island itself, all the objects on an island get rendered in two-dimensional sprites or very low poly models. The density of the billboard is how many things you see on an island that is far away, so you can have it on high, low, or medium. Again, if you are suffering from frame drops every time you look at a distant island, you can turn that to low or medium, otherwise high is good. Grass. It is either off or on. There are only two settings for grass. If you're getting performance issues when you are going through the center of an island, then you might want to turn it off. The ground will still be rendered as green or yellow or brown depending on where you are, and some plants will still be in existence, but for the vast majority the grass can be turned off. Volumetric clouds. Volumetric clouds, the big puffy clouds up in the sky, if you're having performance issues, well, turn them off. If you're not, turn them to low, medium, or high. Personally, I always run them with high. The thing is, if you turn them off, if you're having those performance issues, if you're having frame drops and stuttering, that's one of the first things I would turn off. However, it is noted that the skybox itself will still have clouds painted on it, so you will not have a completely blue sky. Water quality. Water quality is to do with the water tessellation, so that's the waves, the wavelets, and all the motion in the ocean. Normally I would run this on Ultra, but if you are having problems with the sea itself, if Poseidon is causing your machine issues, you can change it to laptop or low, and what you'll see is less moving waves. On a laptop there will be no moving waves at all. On low, medium, high and Ultra, you'll get greater levels of water tessellation. Caustics. Caustics are the separation of light when you go into the water. So as you're swimming around next to an island, you'll see on the sand, you'll see the light appear from above, and you'll see it split into white, blue and red. Those are caustics. It's literally the separation of sunlight into its component pieces. If you like it because it's pretty, leave it on. If it's causing problems, turn it off. That's literally what that does. Anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing comes in a few flavors. Normally I run FXAA, but it comes in off. FXAA, SMAA and TXAA. I'm gonna have to look at these separately because they do have an effect on the game. Off means that when you go to an object such as a tree or a building, you might find any straight lines are jagged and rough. These are going to lessen with the effect of screen resolution, so if you're playing at 2K or 4K, you may not notice it so much, but on distant objects, it'll be more or less noticeable. FXAA is fast approximate anti-aliasing, and that is a post-process. That means the scene is rendered and then the anti-aliasing is applied to the scene frame by frame. It is the lowest power version of anti-aliasing, is the fastest one to render, and it is the one that makes the screen look a little softer, but it is the one that I run most of the time. SMAA, or submorphic anti-aliasing, or as the game calls it, subpixel morphological anti-aliasing, that is usually what you would normally run in a game. However, in Stranded Deep it can make the image look very, very soft, so the choice is yours on that one. TXAA, temporal anti-aliasing. In the older versions of the game, you would have a problem when you got close to the edges of the map. The shadows would stutter and jiggle, and the only way around that was to either turn anti-aliasing off or run TXAA. Temporal anti-aliasing causes a few problems though. Noticeably, whenever there's motion or movement on the screen, so the ocean itself, or if you swing an axe, you'll get ghosting. It hasn't been solved as of recording the video, so TXA is the one that I would recommend and nobody use. Ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion is an interesting one. It is the occlusion of a light source. It is not to do with geometry. So if you have, say, a box and you put it close to the ground, the box will render a soft shadow close to the ground. That is what ambient occlusion does. It looks very, very nice, and normally we run it on a high. If it's causing you problems, and if you turned all the other shadows off, then you probably want ambient occlusion off as well. So you have low, medium, and high. I would recommend anyone with a horsepower run it on high, otherwise you could probably get away with medium. Bloom. Enable HDR bloom light bleeding effect. Yeah, this is the light wrap around items and objects in the world. So the sun is bright and is shining and you look up at it and there's a tree in front of you. The bloom is the light wrap around the tree. It is a very lovely effect, but if it is causing you frame rate issues, then it is one that you can turn off. It's probably not going to have that much effect on frame rate compared to shadows. Shadows are the ones that you really want to get rid of first of all. But bloom, if you can have it on, I would recommend keeping it on. Lens effects. Lens effects, I'm not entirely sure are enabled in the game regardless of whether you turn them on or off. That would be things like dust on the camera lens, or as you go into and out of the water, things like droplets on the screen itself. I believe some years ago they were turned off. I'm not entirely sure if they were turned on, so your mileage may vary, but I would probably say just turn them off. Otherwise, leave them on just in case they enable them again. And motion blur. That is when you look left and right, the whole screen is blurred for a moment just for reasons. People have been doing that on consoles for a while because when you look left and right and you have low frames per second, well, you can see a sudden juddering as you're looking left and right. So if you have that juddering as you are moving the camera around, maybe turning motion blur on would be a good thing. But if you have lots and lots of frames per second, I would turn it off. Friends, don't let friends play games with motion blur. So what we're going to do is change the preset to laptop. We're going to apply this, we're going to go back, and then we're going to play the game. And here we are back in the game on the laptop quality setting. I'm just going to bring that up. So we hit up options, we hit up graphics, and you can see we're on the laptop preset. The resolution stays the same because that is what our screen resolution is, but everything else is off. The field of view has been reduced to 60. Draw distance is near, textures low, billboard density low, but everything has been turned off. Water quality is set to laptop. So if we go back and resume. First of all, interestingly, the shadows are largely absent, but there is still some shading around objects and items as we look at this lantern. Yep, one side is light and the other side is dark. That is definitely a thing. The sea is very calm and very flat. There is still some movement and motion on it, but the big old waves that we are used to are missing, as is the house. The house is missing. The great white bar and grill. Well, we can still see the shark on the roof, and we can still see all the physics objects that would be in the house, including the gyrocopter. But the house itself is completely absent. As is, I was going to say motion on the ocean. This raft here is not bobbing around, but then it is kind of anchored in place. As we do a little walk off underwater, the same is evident under here. So shadows and shading are very limited, it's very bright, but there is still a lot of fish. A lot of things are going on underwater. The geometry as well of models seems to be quite good. I'm going to be honest, when you get up close to them, everything seems as it should do, with the exception of the house. So if you are going to be on a laptop quality setting, and you would use laptop quality settings if you were on a machine and it just couldn't handle anything, but you really wanted to play the game, then it's not unplayable. We'd still have some grass as we go into the island interior, into the forest. And the shading on things like the wheels underneath the DC-3 is evident, so you're not completely without shadows, but they just don't render on the ground or any other objects. It doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look too bad at all. I would say even on laptop quality, the game is still very playable. So here we are on the low quality preset. I'm just going to hit escape, and I'm going to hit options, and I'm going to hit graphics, and I'll show you we are still on the same resolution. That is never going to change, but the preset is low, and that has changed. That has changed shadows from off to low, and that has changed water quality from laptop to low. Interesting, because it has a couple of interesting effects. The The first effect is that the ocean now has large rolling waves on it, so it has much more dynamism in the ocean itself, but the shadows, well, if you look at the water close to the camera, it is dark and it'll become lighter again. There we go. There is an effect of the clouds themselves rolling in front of the sun, even though the clouds are painted onto the skybox as they were in laptop mode. There is no volumetric clouds going on. However, the house is still missing because that setting didn't change. We're going to have a little walk into the interior of the island. Everything underwater is still pretty much the same, but them shadows, yo. Yeah, if there was a way of having the global illumination change sort of light and dark, but without having the bobbly shadows, I'm not entirely sure they're worth it. So as we go back into the interior, we're just going to do a little run through here. We can see the underside of the DC-3 is now a lot darker than it was, and a lot smoother than it was on laptop mode. The colour of the trees and everything is also slightly darker and more realistic, but the way the shadows are just strobing in the environment, I'm not entirely sure I would like to play on this. I would probably just turn them off entirely and go back to laptop mode. And here we are on the medium quality preset, and immediately there are some things in the background that have changed. We have whitecaps, we have clouds. So if we go into the graphics settings and hit up options and graphics, and we can see some things have changed. So medium quality preset, textures, shadows and billboard density are all now on medium, grasses on, volumetric clouds are on low. The water quality has been switched to medium, caustics are now on, anti-aliasing is fast approximate anti-aliasing or FXAA, bloom is still off, but lens effects are now on and motion blur is off. So if we hit back and resume, yeah, those clouds up there are the lowest quality volumetric clouds you can get. They do draw in and render in as they move across the sky. If you wait and just watch one of them, it is quite interesting. If you record and then fast forward the video, it is, again, quite interesting. It does look like a cloud forming and moving across the sky. They are kind of beautiful. The shadows, however, are a little bit more well behaved on the medium setting. The house is still not fully rendered. Oh, there's an aeroplane just crossing the sky. The house is not still fully rendered. We can still see the physics objects inside because the physics object's draw distance is separate from anything that we can change anyway. Billboard density, well, that's the island over there. So the billboard density is just the stuff that's on the island. We didn't check that before, but hey, we got a rock and a tree and a pole. What we don't have is the tower that we built on it. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's absent. So if we move down and drop into the sea, things are looking a little bit more how we expect them to look. There's a little bit more shadowing and shading. If we jump up, yeah, the sea looks like the sea. I mean, when you're butt deep in the sea, it just looks like a bunch of water. So we get here, we can now see light appearing on the barrels. The caustics are all these little light puddles on the sand and the side of the barrels, and they do split into a yellow and a red and a blue, so that's what the caustics do. I personally really like them. I really do enjoy having those extra light effects. The shadows are bolder, richer and deeper on the medium setting. They do still flicker around the edges, but it's a lot less noticeable. And as we go through the island interior, we have more grass than we had before. The underside of the DC-3 is shaded exactly how, well, we would expect it to be shaded, but it is still a little bit scrabbly in terms of the way that the shadows are coming through the trees. However, if you can live with that, medium setting is absolutely usable. So here we are in a high graphics setting, and immediately there's a lot more motion in the ocean. Because this is going to be compressed on YouTube, you're just going to have to take my word for that. Also, aeroplane above. The interesting thing is, the aeroplane that does fly occasionally over the top of the map doesn't seem to be affected by your graphic settings. Things will appear. Things will always appear if they were meant to appear. You're not missing any objects or items in the game. But immediately, the shadows, the shadows now appear to be locked in position, and the waves around the bottom of our tower do seem to be a little bit more lively and active. Interestingly, the island itself looks pretty good. The house is still not fully rendering, but we didn't expect that to fully render. And as we look around, yep, submorphic anti-aliasing, it doesn't look too bad. It's not as soft and as smooth as I thought it was going to be in terms of texture sharpness. Everything looks pretty decent actually. So as we drop underwater and we see a black-tip reef shark just swimming by, caustics on the top of his body. Again, you may need to take my advice. Just take my word for that. We got some caustics on top of the rock though, so that's lovely. And as we swim back towards the island itself, everything's a little bit more smoother, a little bit more how we expect the game to look. The grass is rendering in. It does render in at a certain distance from the player. That is one of those things you will need to make note. The soft shadows on the bottom of the DC3 are looking particularly lovely at this time of day, which is 12:42 in the afternoon. And honestly, yeah, the high settings are probably the most playable of the settings so far. And here we are on the Ultra Graphics preset, and immediately things are, well, to me, there is a little bit of a problem here. You would expect Ultra, if your hardware can handle it, to be the ultimate experience in the game, but unfortunately, there is a fly in the ointment. That's why I said high is probably the best setting you can have, because Ultra has a little bit of an issue. So we're going to hit up Escape, we're going to hit up Options. And we're going to hit up graphics. Everything at the top has not changed because those are user settings. We're going to scroll down. So draw distance is very far. Textures and shadows are ultra. Well, what's the problem? Well, we got to scroll down a little bit. Water quality high. Anti-aliasing TXAA. That is the fly in the ointment. Temporal anti-aliasing. That causes some issues. So we're going to hit back and we're going to hit resume. You'd expect some things like the clouds. The clouds look very nice. The difference between low quality volumetric clouds and high quality volumetric clouds is more noticeable at lower resolutions. They might judder and shimmer, but at high resolutions or high settings, they are very, very smooth. The interesting thing is, the water is also very, very smooth as well. Smoother than it should be. Even though everything is now on Ultra, textures and everything are now on Ultra, there are some issues. The house still isn't fully rendered in either. So if we move forward a little bit, the house starts rendering at the end of the pier. Interesting. As we jump underwater, well, everything is as we would expect, but that fly in the ointment, I'm going to have to show you that up close and personal. So what we're going to do is go back to the beach. And I'm going to need a tree. And the sun. Where is the sun? Well, it's kind of up there. So, that there is bloom, by the way. The light wrapping around the top of the tree. Well, that's the bloom setting. But wait, there's more. Yeah, if I move the axe, you might not be able to see it, but there is a definite trail that the axe leaves in the air as I click. Through the leaves, it's more noticeable. That is the effect of temporal anti-aliasing, and it is advised you disable it, because anything that moves, like the ocean, or if we just move left and right, things are leaving a ghost. The tree itself is leaving ghost lines as I strafe left and right. So between the red bin and the raft itself, those are ghost lines. I don't even know if they're going to be captured on the video. So the ultra settings, not actually the best settings. And as we move around, as we move the camera left and right, it does look super smooth. But there are some issues. Yeah, anything that moves is causing a little bit of, just a tiny amount of ghosting, a tiny amount of softness. If you like it, if you can deal with it, then absolutely deal with it. Absolutely play the game on ultra settings. But otherwise, if you're just using the presets, I would drop down to the high settings. However, high settings are not what I play on. I do play on ultra settings, so I'm just going to go through from the main menu and show you the settings that I personally play on. So here we are on the main menu once again, and all I'm going to do is hit up options, and I'm going to go to graphics, and then I'm going to look up here at the top. So the preset currently is ultra at 1440p. Color profile, I'm going to change that to vibrant because I like more greens and more blues in my game. The fixed frame rate we're going to leave as off, but the VSync I'm going to change to a single frame because I played around with that a while ago, and what I want, because I'm recording most of the time, is a recording without any screen tearing. that gives me that. I think 2 frames actually gives you a lot more stuttering if you happen to be recording. It's a use case scenario, but it's one that I have to use. Draw distance is very far, shadows and textures are already very far, so everything is already pretty much as high as it can be, with the exception of water. We can change that to ultra, and anti-aliasing. We're going to change that back to FXAA and hit apply, and then go back to the game. And now we are back in the world using the same settings I would normally use to record this game for YouTube. And if we hit up escape once more for the final time, we can see options and graphics. The preset is now custom. Yeah, color profile is vibrant. I have left the field of view because, well, all the other settings we're using 60. And if we go all the way down, FXAA is now enabled over temporal. So it's all the fun of ultra settings, but with none of the blurry mess. Also motion blur is turned off. So if we have a little look around, yep, the sea is lively, it has white caps, it is looking beautiful. The island over there, we can now see the tower that we built on it. There's not many trees left on that island anyway, but I can just about see the tower. So the billboard density going up is a little better. The house is being rendered in. Now the difference between low, medium, high and ultra, sometimes you need to actually exit the game to the desktop or just completely leave the game and then come back in, because even on ultra settings the house wasn't fully rendering. So if that's not happening for you, if things are being a little bit weird, just leave the game, come back in again. Otherwise, yeah, all the fun of ultra, but none of the blurriness. And how can we tell? I mean, if we have a little look underwater, it's basically the same as we always expect. Caustics on the floor, shadows on the trees. I'm going to go back to this tree though and whip out an axe. And then do the old swingy swing. So we swing, and we're not getting the blurry mess that we had before. And also, if we go left and right, the tree isn't leaving trails in the water. So that is exactly what we expect. There are a few weird anomalies still. So if we look at the red panels, if we move farther away, they snap into a low detail mode and go black. That's nothing to do with shadows. That's literally everything to do with the low detail model of the polygon, really. So we look up, we have the house, and the bubbles, we have the DC3 out in the forest, we have the soft shadows underneath, we have the shadows even on the grass, I think. Oh no, the grass doesn't, but everything around it does create shadows. Everything is locked and is not moving. We have the god rays through the trees themselves. That's to do with bloom, and everything is looking, it's looking super sweet as we walk backwards through a little tree. Now there is another setting, one other setting that we should mention. It is not a graphics setting, but if you hit up escape and go to options, you have these bits of information here. You have the item highlighting, and we have the crosshair, we have the HUD information, but we also have camera view mode, first person. If you want third person, that's where you change it. So if we change to here, we have the third person view of our character. Now, it is worth noting that if you are on console, certainly, I'm not sure if PC version has a creative mode, but console definitely does have a creative mode. If you start the game in creative mode, you will have a little propeller cap on top of your character. And that is so that if you make a giant base and say, ooh, look at my 15 gyrocopters and all the things that are around on my island, everyone can see that you've actually made it in creative mode. And I believe if you go into the game in creative mode and then snap into regular mode, you'll keep the propeller hat. So just note that. There may also be a bug where you get the propeller hat anyway on the console version of Stranded Deep. So that is just one thing. If we hit up escape and then options again, we'll change third person to off. We can turn the crosshair off, and then yes please, keep the settings and then resume. The crosshair, the little dot in the center of the screen, disappears. We can still interact with items because it will appear when we get close to an interactable item, but otherwise it vanishes for us. Personally, I like having the crosshair. I like having a little thing to say that's the center of the screen, and also it's less alarming when you walk up to something and suddenly something just snaps into the center of the screen. So we're going to hit as options again. I'll turn the crosshair back on and the HUD information on with item names, hit apply, because that is the only thing you can get. And if we walk up to something, it will now tell us what we're looking at. So that's a lantern, and it'll also give us information. Press E to pick up, hold E to turn on, light hook, plank raft floor. It's just a bit of extra information if you need it. Some people might want that, some people might not. And the last option, if we have options and we turn item names back to off, item highlighting, we'll turn that off as well. Apply. So item highlighting gives you the attraction highlight. So this lantern now does not have the attraction highlight. You still get the change in our crosshair, but the attraction highlight is gone. What is the attraction highlight? I'll show you. One will change. We'll change the item highlighting on and hit apply. And then, so that's the white line around the object. So if we look away and look to it, the white line is called an attraction highlight, and that is there to attract the player. That attracts the player and tells you that you can interact with this item. It is not unique to Stranded Deep. A lot of games have it, and it allows you to know exactly what is and isn't interactable. So there we are. That is how to make the game run on a machine that really can't run solitaire, but you really do want to play your island survival game. But it's also a way of changing all the settings up and getting maximum graphical fidelity out of the game itself. It is made in Unity. A lot of games are these days. Hearthstone is Unity. Ori and the Blind Forest is Unity. You can get some really nice looking games in the Unity engine, and although it has some issues, notably things like TXAA, temporal anti-aliasing, should never really be turned on, the game itself is beautiful. So what I'm going to do is leave it there for the time being. If you like these videos, definitely leave a little like, leave a subscribe. If you want notifications, dingle the bingle. If you don't want notifications, don't click the bell, and I'll tell you what, I'll catch you next time.